It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
Kevin, do you think there was a point where there was an off-ramp for the football side to be better? And some of the things that I'm thinking about to kind of frame the question, right? Sean's exit. We see what McVay becomes in L.A. How the Shanahans were handled. Is there a way that the franchise gets handed to Kyle eventually, and he's the head coach here? Or some of the stuff that happened before 2010. Is there a way where the football is better on a more consistent level, that they just kept driving down the road of incompetence past a pretty obvious on-ramp that could have perhaps changed the outcome? Obviously, the off-the-field stuff, I think, eventually catches up. You can't get investigated by Congress no matter how good your football team is. But is there, at least from a football perspective, some off-ramp that they passed?
The off-ramp would have been Dan Snyder developing some self-awareness at an older age, which I don't know if those spots were ever going to be changed, because the self-awareness, if he had it, would have been looking in the mirror and saying, I'm the problem. And then it could have led to, here is the football person that's going to run the football operation, and we're going to give him total autonomy to do it. And I'm going to stay out of it completely. No player relationships, no coach relationships, no ideas, no drafting of Dwayne Haskins, no timing, guys at the Indy Combine. But those moments were Marty Schottenheimer, for one. Cooley always said to me, Dan's attempt, and Dan, told him this, my attempt to become a better owner was to hire Bruce Allen. And, and the reason for that is he got rid of Vinny Serrato. The two of them were clowns. I mean, that was the biggest clown show for 10 years, with the exception of the Marty year that we had. And he hired somebody that did have a reputation in the league as a really strong administrator, not a true football GM, but a strong administrator. And then he hired Mike Shanahan as well, but couldn't help himself. The RG3 relationship between the two of them, submarine the relationship that RG3 had with the coach and the staff. I don't know. I mean, there were off-ramp opportunities. Like, he was able to attract, quality people. Marty, Joe Gibbs, Mike Shanahan, Ron Rivera to a certain degree. Now, he had to pay for them. And in some cases, there weren't many options available, like in Ron's case. And Gibbs would have never gone back to another team necessarily. But I don't know. I think the only way that things would have changed would have been for him to finally do what he never did, and that is take accountability rather than say, no, it's his fault and point fingers, because it was always someone else's fault. Even if, Burnley was out there telling everybody it was Bruce's fault. The leaking of the John Gruden emails was a way to pin it on Bruce.
Absolutely. I think the next thing I'd ask you is, like, you talked about all kind of this dysfunction on the football side, the interpersonal relationships, like, from the new owners, like, what do they need to do to kind of recapture some of that old fan base, to kind of inspire the fans and kind of put a good football product back on the field?
Treat people well and be humble, for starters. Hopefully you'll have a likable ownership group. That'll mean a lot, I think, to the community. But more important than anything else is establishing a way to create a winning culture. And I think that starts with, accessing the best of the best and hiring somebody to oversee and run the football operation, and then get out of his way, and trust in it and let it breathe and let it marinate and give it time. And hopefully this group is good at identifying talented people and not meddling. And then I, believe, it's not just me, I think the majority of the fan base believes that this ownership group has to address the name and the brand. At the very least, they have to take it seriously in terms of, there's a majority of this fan base that does not like the team name or the brand that is associated with it for whatever the reasons are. And there's no value in this current brand. It's been here since February 2nd, 2022. There's no equity built up in it. And whether they change it or not, I think it's important for them to appear to be serious in approaching this subject, because it's a very touchy and serious and important subject for the majority of their past fans, and probably a majority of their present fans as well. I don't know about their future fans, but I think that's something that needs to be taken seriously regardless of how it plays out.
So the thing with the name that I struggle with, Kevin, is like there's no such thing as a good name for a team. Team names build up equity with fan bases because they win, and because there are memories and nostalgia tied to that name. Very rarely is there anything that's actually like on its face, oh, what an excellent name. No, you don't hear the XFL names and be like, oh, what a great name. No, if the DC Defenders are good for 20 years and they continue to be a sport that people care about, or a team that people care about, people are like, oh yeah, I love the Defenders. What a great brand. And so is there, like, how do you address that in a way that isn't just allowing time to pass and success to happen? Or is it something that because Commanders is associated with Snyder that you feel like it has to go?
A little bit of that, Craig. I don't disagree with you. I don't know what the answer is. I mean, I have a preference. I know the old name won't come back. My preference would be that Washington become the brand. I think the issue with this situation versus, a new organization or a startup is that there was a 90-year or close to 90-year emotional attachment to the last brand. So whether, so really more so than a startup situation, an expansion team, you were really look, I'm not a fan of a lot of the way things have been handled. A lot of the public-facing things have been handled, Sean Taylor, et cetera, the execution of the rollout of the name. But it was an impossible task for Jason Wright and Will Misselbrook in that group. You were never going to please everybody. And whatever it changes to, if they decide to change it, you're never going to be able to please everybody. But there's something in the way this rolled out, the lack of energy by the people that actually came up with it, the clumsiness in the handling of it, the changing of the uniforms, I think, is a big thing for a lot of people. It doesn't look like the team that they grew up rooting for. I think there is an answer here. I think the answer is Washington is the brand. Washington football team, FC Washington, Washington FC. And it's all about Washington being the brand. And like with soccer, there are nicknames that come about with the fan base. And many people might choose Hogs or Skins or whatever. I mean, the Washington Senators were here after the Washington Nationals were here. They changed the name to the Senators after many years, but many fans just call them the Nats for years, even before the latest iteration, the 2005 iteration of the team. But the bottom line is this is a very real subject and issue for the majority of fans, and they should be able to multitask. Winning's the most important thing. That's the focus. But they can do more than one thing simultaneously. And I think they should explore whether or not this name and everything associated with it is a plus or a minus moving forward. If they decide, look, we went through everything and we took this seriously and we looked into this and we're going to stick with it for the following reasons, I think people could live with that. But I think that they need to be serious about this being an issue. That would be my recommendation anyway.
So, I mean, obviously you mentioned that there's, the Defenders or the DC or Washington brand, is that the fix? Are enough people in support of that to make that happen? Because I feel like one of the issues I have with changing the name is that you're going to keep changing the name because people are going to be disenfranchised with it the entire time. Everyone's gonna be like, oh, that's dumb or that's silly, kind of like to Craig's point. So to me, there's like no end to this. I mean, do you feel that kind of same way, or do you think they should just kind of cut the cord and do something completely different?
Easy answer on a nickname. That's why my recommendation would be make Washington the brand. I know Washington football team felt a little clunky, but ultimately Washington was the focus. The name change was jarring, but the realization that the name had been changed really hit home for a lot of us on February 2nd, 2022, when the actual replacement name happened. But anyway, look, I don't have any issue with those that say, no, just stick with it. It's fine. I'm fine with it. I'm not about to lecture people on their emotions. This is a very emotional issue for people. And so I know that, well, it's my belief, and I think a lot of the polling from a lot of us through Twitter or whatever has indicated an overwhelming percentage of people who call themselves fans or called themselves fans think that the name should be changed. But to your point, and to Craig's point, there's not a magic bullet answer. It's a big challenge. Although I do think something that, relates a little bit to the past, like Hogs has a better chance of sticking and being more popular. Craig, to your point, maybe the new group rolling out the new name and doing it with just slightly more energy than the last group did, and it not being associated with Dan, although I don't really associate Dan with this name. I associate Jason and Will Misselbrook and the whole team that came up with it more than I do Dan, but that's just me. But I don't know. I don't have like the obvious solution. That's the problem. This conversation is very complex. I do think Washington solves I hate the new name you picked. I hate Hogs, or I hate Red Wolves, or I hate, whatever. Dan's plan all along was Warriors. They had that marked, and then they didn't renew the mark. And I actually think that if that's what the team's name was right now, and they had the same color scheme, uniform scheme, etc., I think it would have been more acceptable to more people. But I don't know. It's not an easy conversation. It's not an easy solution, but I think it's easy for new ownership to address this, look into it, explore it, and take it seriously. I think it would be a mistake for them to come in and say, yeah, we're not even considering anything related to the name or brand. We're sticking with it. We're fine with it. I think that would be a mistake.
I talked to someone recently who was in the know on how this process went. Let's just say the congressional investigations and such didn't exactly help in any IP fight. Like the Golden State Warriors did not want to be accidentally associated at all with this football team over what was happening over the last couple of years. But Kevin, if you want to talk about that another time on either your show, your pod, whatever, we can definitely dive into that. As for now, I know you have to go record your podcast, so thank you for your time on this one. We'll see you on Thursday at the Burgundy and Sold party. Again, doors 4:30 at the Bullpen. Kevin will have his show regular time, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. I'll be broadcasting live from the Bullpen starting at 4. Everyone listening can come join starting at 4:30. Sheehan, appreciate you always, sir. Thank you.
Looking forward to seeing you guys. Thanks.
Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command. First, why don't you like it? It lets other people know that it was good, and then they should watch it too. And Logan, we have a new exclusive home for full episodes.
We do. 1067 The Fans YouTube page. Go check it out and please subscribe.
Yeah, do what Logan said.
Do it.
Very, very smart.